even this small budget that we had, which was really not that small. We were just under 5, so we were like tier 1 out of the country. I pitched this movie to every single studio in town, small ones, big ones, all of them.
Okay.
Couldn't get this movie financed ever. And I pitched a couple different drafts of the script over years, not one. Not one. Not even a little bit. Not even like, oh, maybe like a couple of them pitch in a few different. No, nothing. It was just like an unsellable movie to them. It was just like, if we always function from a place of like, are we going to be able to sell the this idea to the masses? I'm never ever gonna get a movie made.
Right.
So like, there has to be a different way.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. In our latest episode, Kristina Woo speaks with Kristen Stewart about writing, directing, and producing her debut feature film, The Chronology of Water. They also discuss the creative choices of adaptation from page to screen, art versus commerce, and much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, or Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Kristina in conversation with Kristen.
Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and to chat with the WJ about your new film, Chronology of Water.
Of course.
Congratulations. I'm just so curious, like, what is your relationship with writing and the writing process? I mean, you've been in the business for so long, and I'm just love to hear sort of like what your sort of take on the process is.
When I first began kind of constructing the setup here, I was a fledgling writer who had never done it before. And I felt as though when I read this book that I could construct a series of images that I thought was a film. And there then were connective, emotional sinews that I knew would always be discovered on set, but that they needed to kind of be carved out structurally in a script. The book is fragmented. It feels it flits back and forth from first-person narration, prose, poetry, and then sometimes, occasionally you'll drop into like a scene, but it's rare. And the whole thing feels a little bit out of time. Like you're never questioned. It has no present tense. And so in making the screenplay, it was like, I guess maybe for a more experienced writer, it would have been tempting to provide more structure, maybe 3 acts, maybe some consolidating, but I didn't want this to feel prescriptive in any way, and I didn't want it to feel easier than reading the book. I wanted it to feel kind of neurological, like it sort of was a flat, like it was truly emulating the language, which is, it's all a series of fragments, repetitions, retinal flashes, the way that your life makes sense to you emotionally, but isn't necessarily, when verbalized, something that someone else could grasp. On paper, it's all over the place, but if you were to step into the body, you would understand it completely. And so making a script that was like precise and a diving board into opportunity in terms of creating a life in order to, for the movie to have its own body and its own memory, so we could then stitch it back together like a quilt that really like wrapped her life up. It took a long time. I mean, like I probably at some point had adapted every page from the memoir and ultimately started seeing what the movie could say that wasn't held down by the details and the fact that this is a real woman who had these experiences, but that we could create a movie about us all, a movie in which Lydia Yuknevich's life was important and it was the sort of Kickstarter to this engine, but at the same time, we weren't bogged down by that specificity, that it was kind of allowed to like, I wanted every audience member, anyone who ever interacted with this movie or built a relationship with it, to put themselves inside of it. And so it needed to feel like poetry instead of like something that felt like a movie that we're used to seeing that feels more leading or prescriptive.
I think you really feel that. I mean, when I saw the movie, I saw it in a room there was one other man, and I was like, I wonder if he's picking up on some of the things that I'm picking up on. But I was really struck by the fact that I saw the movie first, and then I started reading the book, and details like the crying corner, or even just the way that Lydia, the novelist, the memoirist, constructed the chapters. It was so evident to me that you were sort of like following her lead in terms of that structure. But then in terms of like, I don't know, I guess I'm just really curious to know, there are so many like indelible images and things that are so specific to her experience, but that I think a lot of women can relate to. I'm curious like how you landed on like, what are the images you kept? What are the things that you sort of went away from? It sounds like the writing process was like not very prescriptive and like you didn't read like Kill the Cat or whatever. So like, yeah, I'm just curious, like, was it sort of more out of intuition and just feeling it out, or did you also sort of like write as you were on set?
The movie wrote itself on set, but I was doing no writing. I mean, that was about, I guess to use one specific example, in the more specific abuse, trauma-inducing scenes, I always wanted to retreat into the body and have it feel like a distant memory. One that's full of striking imagery because those are the pictures that you remember, but you're not quite sure what was said. And maybe there's a couple of senses involved, but maybe it's not always so visual. Maybe you hear a buckle, maybe you sort of can hear a breath or a sort of like effort. And ultimately what happened was like in the script, we stare at her shoes. In the house that we found ourselves in, it was full of water damage. In every corner of the house, there was like seeping, rotting, the effects of kind of neglect and the corrosion that water can, the water was changing the house. And so it was so lucky. It was like, we always wanted to retreat into her body and make it feel like there were pictures that she could kind of whisper in your ear to give context about and kind of re-narrativize over and in turn possess those memories instead of feeling subject to them. There's nothing objective about them. They're so subjective and they're so kind of like renderings versus like any kind of like clear story of something that happened to a person. And it's so sensory. And then in addition to that, when we were on set, we had this beautiful gift of this like perfect metaphor. And so we leaned into it. But in the script, there were always like flashes written in. It was always something that we looked away from in order to feel actually much harder than if we stared at it and sort of like alienated people with the bare bones of it. It's like sternum stuff. It's the stuff that's the deepest. Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel that because I was really struck by her writing. It's very plain spoken and like the most visceral way, but then also, as you said, like so poetic and so in the body. I've heard her talk about sort of body stories.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, how did you balance, or did you feel the need that to sort of pick between being really like faithful to the text or as faithful as you can be versus like following inspirations that the text led to, or was it all sort of like of a piece for you?
So clear to me that the book was begging to be not reinterpreted, but like metabolized by anyone who picked it up. And so like the filling of this experience had to be so personal. And so therefore the faithfulness was in leaning into the personal and leaning away from the specificity of like Lydia Yuknovich's life. She's one of my favorite writers of all time. Her novels are so themselves, but the memoir is like, I mean, it's her whole life, and it's kind of the memoir is not just about telling you how she became a writer. It's about writing itself. So no, like my reverence and kind of loyalties were to form, like transmutability and being like kind of complicit in that, being a part of it, being like on the team. It's such a call to arms, this book. It's such an activating piece. There are images that I was obsessed with, lines that I was obsessed with, but they're all the little ones that I chose. The book is vast.
Yeah.
And so, just making sure that we were making a movie about us all instead of just one person was really important to me. But then at the same time, like, I was also, it took a while for me to actually, we went through it was like a lot of years of iterating. And I think when the images started really speaking for themselves, we started pulling back on voiceover. And then these utterances that remained felt truly like an inside voice that was this bolstering secret that was finally allowed to come out and bolster others and not just her. instead of anything that felt like we were leading the audience, because it is a kind of unmoored experience. I didn't want to feel like anyone had any help. I didn't want anyone to feel like I was like helping them along. It needed to come from her body. It needed to feel like an unearthed secret, the whole thing, like a movie you found in someone's attic.
It's only until the film ended did I kind of realize, like, in one respect, this is a movie about writing and a writer. Was there ever a point where you, I guess, like, clearly this is a movie that is about not only one woman's experience, but kind of like all of our like collective sort of like female embodied experiences.
Yeah.
And so the idea of, I'm guessing that the idea of the biopic never really like entered your mind, or like the concept of like, we need to see her writing, but in a like, you know, the words are like superimposed over her face sort of thing. It sounds like everything was more of a piece and more metaphorical than like, she is a writer. This is how she became a writer. Like, she lived in Florida. She was
Sure.
a swimmer.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was just more,
I wanted it to feel like you were watching what she wrote,
Yeah.
and you weren't quite sure whether or not you were in a memoir until the end, when it stands up and gains wisdom and gains composition, because those memories are closer to the surface. And she's also kind of aware of what she's saying now, whereas in the beginning, she's figuring out how to be and how to live through swimming, through word repossession, through body repossession. And so it's like the movie feels like a DMT trip until about halfway to a third of the way through, when you start going, oh my God, this whole experience we've had, she has been showing us. It's all in retrospect. There's no present tense whatsoever. There's not a flashback. There's not a flash forward. It's all been the forming of a writer. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you see her like writing in her notebook, and you see her like typing the thing. When she titles that short story and she finally writes the Chronology of Water and sits back and looks at it, it should be a kind of like epiphany moment where you go, for the audience and for her, where you go like, oh, we're not watching a real true story. We're watching someone try and remember a real true story, and therefore making it something that isn't true, but making it art.
right.
We've just watched this rendering. It's definitely not like what happened. We double back. We like see different versions of things. We wonder if she's a reliable narrator. She definitely isn't. Memory is not the truth. Memory steps further away constantly from the
Right.
truth as many times as you retell something. So it feels like a retelling of a retelling of a retelling, because those memories that like feel like ice cubes in a glass that you're like, squirreling around to grab at, but like are hard, they slip away as soon as you get near them. But it's that like little tap of like, that it's like the punctum. It's like an image that is haunted and echoes, and then put together with other images kind of tells a larger story about like the more pervasive female experience versus exactly what happened to this woman. So it's like, it's kind of like the trace that every woman who's like, and that's when I say every woman who has, I mean all of us who bleed. There's a certain release that like, if you can kind of control that pattern and control that trace, or at least just see how different we all are, but like how they all run together. The movie's about everyone. Like it's
Right.
like, and it's just like the malleability of reality being in your hands to control and to not let take you under if need be. Like, you got to change those stories. Like, we are connected through storytelling. Everything that gets us through every day are the stories we tell ourselves about what's happened to us. And reframing those things is vital. And it's sort of the whole book. Hopefully the movie is like just a reminder and a kind of activation piece in terms of not letting those prescribed stories pull you under.
Well, I think the film does that really successfully, because God forbid this should have been made in a more like conventional way, right? The title of her saying and writing the Chronology of Water would have come at the end.
Right.
It would have been really linear. It would have
Yeah, it's
been
like a false victory at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. And it would have been, and it made so much sense when that scene happened, sort of, if memory serves, kind of in the middle of the movie, or certainly not at the end.
Yeah, the victories undulate, and she fails a lot. She's a frustrating protagonist. It's definitely something that she sort of peters out into contentment versus like exploding into like, I have like, faced the mountain of adversity. Like, we love the success story of a woman, like, getting
Right.
out of the things that hurt her. It's like,
Right.
she's never really going to outrun that echo. I mean, the father echo, and that could be like your dad, you know, the priest, the therapist, the teacher, the professor, the people that insert their voices into our bodies in order to control us. They never go away, but you have to kind of like duck and dive and make something else.
Right. Every time you kept showing her father, the like conventional writer in me was like, man, I wish we're going to see a conversation between them, but like obviously not, right? We're not going to see that. But there is still a relationship that they have because there is always going to be a time between them. But clearly she's enacting her trauma and her pain and all these other things around that in different ways that doesn't need to involve him. And the fact that he's kind of like there at the end, it says a lot, but also it says, I think, to me so much about her. And I think that I was really not surprised by, but when I listened to Lydia speak in her TED Talk and other interviews that she's done, in an alternate universe, she could be a very like embittered, angry, shut down person, but she's so hopeful and empathetic and kind of like joyful in her own sort of like, in her words, like a misfit kind of way. And I'm just wondering, obviously like talking about tone, especially within filmmaking, is it can be very kind of opaque or very hard to articulate. But I'm just curious, like, how did you balance clearly her essence while you were on set? Was it in the writing, or is it just like more of a like active thing that you were talking about with your department heads and with your actors? Because it just seems so, like I said, like another version of this movie could have been
very self-serious.
And also like, I guess I want to flip my wrists after watching this, but it didn't feel that way. It feels very hopeful in the end.
Yeah, I've had a lot of my closest like male friends be like, "Oh, this is tough. It's really tough." I'm like, "Yeah, but doesn't it feel good because she's like okay?" And doesn't it feel good when she, you know, takes her body back in ways that in the movie are the most explicit moments? They're not the abuse moments that are the most explicit. It's always about like her kind of repossessing her body in this way that feels courageous and stunning and like explosive. And so I like have a lot of fun watching the movie. And also her voice is irreverent and it's funny and she's super self-aware. I mean, she's frustrating and she definitely like doesn't always accept the good thing, and it's tough to watch somebody have a hard time loving themselves, but it's like hella relatable. And ultimately, like I do think that the way that she uses her body as this sort of sexual battering ram seems painful, but it also seems like imagine if that energy was just bottled, it would have absolutely pulled us. There's something about the release of the film, even if it's releasing negativity feels good. You know, it's primal scream stuff and there's joy in that. And so it's easy to fixate on the stuff that happened to her or whatever, but I think that makes sense because from a male perspective, like how embarrassing for you all. Yes, of course. It's like hard to look at that pink elephant in the room. It's a problem. You're all a problem. You're
all unwell.
It's fucking thousands of years, millions, and like it's okay and it's no one's fault, but it's like definitely something that we can intellectualize and try and get around if people are kind of willing to just like lean into the personal in order to get out of it and sort of go, you know, it's okay. I would love people to feel proud of this woman by the end of the movie and like sort of like, I mean, the last line of the movie, she's such a generous and like wise and sort of inviting human being. She just wants people to realize that they also have the power to change their own stories. Like the last line of the movie is so, I'm not speaking out of my asshole when I'm saying this, like, come in, the water will hold you. There's nothing about it that ever feels like the victim story that we're used to. It's like she never really kills it. Her killing it is writing certain sentences feel like yes, but then still there are so many mishaps and falls and ways that like, you know, she didn't do everything perfectly, and for us to still have a hero in that person, I think is like transgressive but also totally realistic and like way more hopeful than having someone who wins every fucking battle and then gets to the end and goes, I didn't want to make a movie about morals. I wanted to make a movie about someone surviving and like turning trauma into art, and yeah, that being the success story.
Yeah. I just wanted to back up a little too, because I'm curious. I've heard you speak about wanting to make this movie for a really long time. And I'm curious, when did you first encounter the book? And were you already sort of looking for something you knew you wanted to direct, and like finding the book was sort of a key that unlocked it? Or did the book like compel you? Was it like a revelation to want to do that?
I've always wanted to direct films. This was a revelation insofar as like I just thought the form of it was so conducive to why I think movies are cool, which is they emulated dream state. And it's like this thing that was hyper specific about this one woman. I felt like the only way to stay, like I've said in the interview already, like, you know, to stay faithful to that would be to bring yourself to it completely. It feels very like some of my favorite movies. It's like I would never compare our endeavors or like my efforts, but my inspiration, like, you know, things that really lean into poeticism, like Tarkovsky movies, like things that allow you to drift into ways of seeing the world that are impossible to describe. I mean, in fact, it's interesting that this literary experience led me towards a cinematic experience because it's not about telling people how to feel or finding the right words for anything. It's like, it's creating atmosphere. One of the first lines in the book is like about how her father's hands, when they turned against her. And so it imbues every time you interact with this father with this idea that there is trespass within that relationship. But to show that in a movie, you either have to say it, which is trite, or you have to show it in the first frames of the movie,
Right.
which is tough, too tough maybe, alienating maybe. And so like, I just thought this thing, we can tell like all of our stories with this thing just by atmospherically suggesting trespass and thievery. And whether or not your dad was a monster or not, there's a pretty innate female experience of feeling stolen from and silenced by the oppressive voices in our lives. And so this felt like activating and like stop waiting, you know, and it felt very seal breaky because now that I've finished the film, there's like, you know, not to get funny because when you say stuff like this, well, what is it? And then people go, well, but not that you care, but there's like 3 movies I want to make yesterday. Right. And I didn't have that before this. And so it was maybe like for some writers who read her books or for some writers who take her workshops or bounce off of her as students, it did the same thing for me as a filmmaker, realizing that I had a voice that was like worth listening to.
Well, I think that's like the best way that you can access art, like through other art. Like I gasped when Fiona Apple's Regret came on.
Really?
I think I startled the person sitting next to me because I love that song. And I
Me
think
too.
the fact though that also with her music that like I've loved since the beginning, like it's similar to Lydia in that it's like so plain spoken, but also so painterly and visceral, but like it all felt of a piece. So yeah, that was just I think that got me.
Yeah. And there's something so found soundy about it. It really feels like not, I mean, especially like Clutch the Bolt Cutters, but like it sounds like someone's in their house
screaming,
banging on whatever they need to bang on to make the right sound. Like it's like, it feels really in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask sort of probably an annoying like business question. But considering the fact that like
my business
truly we're wearing blazers, we're being serious. The fact that the business is sort of changing so quickly and it feels like a lot of people are kind of like realizing or remembering that sort of the independent way is another way to be making things. I'm curious what your process of like, did you have to pitch this to someone? Like, how did you actually get this on its feet? Because I just feel like, especially considering the types of movies that are in theaters now that are quite opposite of what you made. I'm just curious to hear about what that process was like for you, because I think a lot of, especially our WJ listeners are like, and not just people, everyone in this industry, I think is just wondering like, how do we just make things for ourselves? Why do we have to wait for other people to say yes?
Yeah.
Even though you probably did have to wait for a few people to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to kind of in a unilaterally benevolent and sort of like communist way start stealing movies. Even this small budget that we had, which was really not that small, we were just under 5, so we were like tier 1 out of the country. I pitched this movie to every single studio in town, small ones, big ones, all of them.
Okay.
Couldn't get this movie financed ever, and I pitched a couple different drafts of the script over years, not one. Not even a little bit. Not even like, oh, maybe like a couple of them pitch in a few different. No, nothing. It was just like an unsellable movie to them. It was just like, if we always function from a place of like, are we going to be able to sell the this idea to the masses? I'm never ever gonna get a movie made.
Right.
So like, there has to be a different way. And that's not to say that I wouldn't be for the rest of my career in service of certain easier sells, commercial sells. I think there are ways to do interesting work within certain scenarios, but less and less, I think making films without a singular perspective being supported with integrity versus fear of making your money back. And look, it's an industry. We can't just be bleeding money. Then stop spending so much money on the movies. The flabby, even my process, which I tried to handcraft and design from the ground up in order to not leak and bleed and just be flabby and inconsiderate. Reinvent the wheel for sure. And this is easier said than done. And it's kind of coming from a place of admitted a little bit of privilege and a little bit of not at all. I think philosophically, I'm so opposed to functioning from a place of judgment and self-scrutiny and overt awareness of what other people want. You have to function from a place of desire. And if that means scrapping things together and doing it Cassavetes style, then great. Or if it means that, you have to leave the country, which I had to do, didn't want to. I'd love to make movies where I'm from. I would love to make movies in fucking Los Angeles. Impossible right now. And I definitely think the next thing I make will be here, and it'll seem impossible because it'll be totally literally made with Scotch tape and a couple straws. But I think that we can make genuine things like that. I just there's a sort of genuine thing that I'm craving and missing and lacking. And it doesn't mean that making things for nothing means unrefined or sort of unthoughtful or DIY punk. Does not mean that we're ignoring kind of concerted aesthetic.
Right.
And I just down to be in other people's movies if they're willing to go through that process, but I don't have the stomach for it. And this movie was just Caesared and Caesared and Caesared. It was pulling knives out of it the whole time. It's treated like the body of a woman, and it's perfect. You can feel it. There's there's a get up and zombie go that it has. And I think maybe moving forward, I just refuse to be subject to the drain of a process that is just not working and not in service of us. Because I think if you serve yourself, then you serve a genuine audience. Mm-hmm. But if you serve this sort of vague notion that nobody can be aware of because it's a purely subjective fucking thing that we're dealing with here, then you're going to make nothing. You're going to suck the life out of the middle of every movie, even if it starts off with purity. You go, okay, well, now make it for everyone. We can't make movies for everyone. It has to be for you, and then you have to assume that you're not so rarefied as an individual that you're not going to find fellows through your genuine curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, I think you will be able to find that in Los Angeles. I think there are a lot of people who are more independently minded, or just people for whom, obviously, we all love this because of the craft, and we are making our livings through this, but it isn't just for capitalism. But
some people, yeah.
I think more than you would. I hope more than I would think. I feel I guess the writers are a very genuine bunch.
Yeah, totally. But also gosh, you got to make a living too. It's how do you know what I mean? How do you keep working and then also sort of stay true to, see, what I'm saying is an extreme, I don't have to work for the man and I will never, because I don't make my living as a writer. Do you know what I mean? I'm lucky I'm an actor. I've been an actor for a long time. So I get to kind of just inhabit this other, or try to carve out this corner that feels, somewhat untouchable. And hopefully, you don't need to have 1,000 friends. Make a little movie, make a couple friends. I don't need to make the biggest stuff. The fact that anyone's seeing this movie is we've done it.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled that it's having its own relationship with a couple of individuals. It feels I'm so happy. Just didn't think that we'd ever really get it over the finish line.
I mean, I think, what is the average? It's most people's first films do take at least a decade to make. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think you did it, and a lot of people are too scared to do it, or can't pull it together. So I think that's cool. I'm realizing I had a lot of sort of actor related questions too. You got to play Diana and Spencer, and I'm curious if that experience of playing a real person at all informed your thinking towards this movie, or just that's apples, this is oranges. Just curious about that.
I think all my favorite performers who have endeavored to represent a real life that people have real ownership over and awareness of. There's always this like bridge between them and that person. I think sometimes like representation can be truer than the truth. Like a sort of like copy of a copy can feel like so genuine because it's like, again, like I was talking about desire, like it's just like someone's impulse towards someone tells a story maybe more than getting every detail perfect, because then it just kind of feels like a regurgitation of something we all know already. And I felt the same way about Spencer as I did about Lydia. This is kind of, they're both ghost stories. We're not trying to teach lessons on these figures. They're like traces of a person, and kind of an amalgamation of the director, the writer, the actors, like inclinations towards that person. And so yeah, like in playing a real person, I was constantly telling Imogen, like, this is you. You're playing yourself. You're playing yourself always. Like my favorite actors kind of do have like one foot in, one foot out in terms of like being so subject to the inspiration and the environment and like the specific context of what you're trying to convey, but then at the same time, like being yourself. Because it's kind of diluted to think that you can't. So you might as well lean into the ways that you might have, or even if it's just projection, kind of assume the ways that you might be similar, the way you relate to a person. It's like, by the end of Spencer, I was like, I am her. I'm like, well, we were probably very different. You know what I mean? But like, there are things that she said, things that she did, ways that she moved through the world that I loved so much. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I know her.
Right.
You know what I mean? We make each other up. But that's like kind of the beauty of trying to get to know each other, is that we do make each other up and hold those versions of each other close to ourselves. And yeah, so biopics, they get a bad rap, you know, because they get wooden and they get a little bit bogged down in the details, and like trying to do a perfect impression is just a little less fun for me.
Right. I mean, besides from when Lydia was like young, I really liked the choice of Imogen just played her throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
We didn't have to like imagine of like, oh, how old is she here? And what is she like? I think that adds to the impressionistic nature of the film, and what you're saying about how it's sort of like in the present and sort of spanning all time and sort of a memory and then and now. So I thought that was really effective.
Her playing really young was a tough call too, because it's like, you know, we have like her as a kid, two different, I guess actually no, there's two little kids, and then there's Emmy. And I mean, look, we're both 35 years old. We make this movie. We're not like definitely not trying to be like, oh yeah, she's 18 here. But it's like how you carry your 18-year-old self. Sometimes you remember things like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And like there are certain pictures and moments and like things that you remember saying to your dad at the biggest fight you ever had with him, where you go, God, it feels like it feels like I'm still that person. So it would have been more biopic-y and a little bit alienating to cast somebody else and go like, oh, perfect casting. It looks just like Imogen. She has the right mole right here. It was just kind of, also she's the type of performer that has the integrity to go like, yo, I'm 16, all right? Just swing with me. And you're like, okay. And I mean, the whole thing is like kind of imagining. So it's like, I think her asking you to imagine with her just works.
Yeah.
And you get to be closer to her.
No,
it
really
makes
effective.
time kind of continuous, like it doesn't exist. Like
Exactly.
everything's happening all at once.
Yes. And I thought that was great. I saw this movie on the same day that I also saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Oh, cool.
So I've just been in like a really like empowered, but also kind of like rageful headspace in a way that I think is like, we need more of this. We
Yeah, it
need
feels
more.
good.
Yeah. I'm really curious. You've worked with so many amazing writer-directors throughout the course of your career. And I'm just curious, like, what have you absorbed from them? And like, if there's anything that you've observed, borrowed from them, or been like, I wouldn't do that for me, or like doesn't work for my process. Like, yeah, you've worked with so many people. I'm just really curious to hear like if there's anything that really has stuck with you.
Yeah. My favorite writer-directors are incredibly precise and pretty much want it word perfect, because they've done something that really is constructed. And then at the same time, always there's this like ocean of room given for something to live and breathe on its own. And there's definitely no way to emulate that. It's like you hope that you can strike a balance similar to the things that I've experienced with people that are making something like on their own terms and is so hyper-specific, and you feel like if you change a word, that you're just making it worse, because but then at the same time, if you kind of generate a moment that was inspired by the words that surprises them, and then you get to celebrate like this like truth discovery, there's like nothing better than that. But there's definitely no way to like prepare for it's instinctive. I mean, it's like make something worth honoring and then create an environment where you can break the seams of that and best it. But then also trust that if we're not besting it, then you have someone to wrangle you back to the page, which is fucking important. I think writers also get kind of the short end of the stick sometimes, like, because people went to school and they wrote book reports and they can like talk and stuff. Actors the same. People can walk and talk. It's like, yeah, anyone could do that. It's like, yeah, but you didn't, Like writing something whole is impossible. Like it's not my first job. It's really my third, and it's really hard. And I am now so reverential of, like, I just worked with Constance Pugh and his movies are so precise. And if I changed like the order of something, or if I was always realizing how perfect his dialogue was. And then at the same time, there were moments in between those written lines that were so alive, and like he would get so giddy about that. And for him to hold space for precision and exploration is like, for writer directors who are actually going, this all came from me, this is conception right here.
Yeah.
It's different when someone doesn't write that thing, because then all of a sudden you get to set and you start marking up the sides and you start changing everything, and it's like, let's make it our own. Not impossible, but for me, seriously, less fun. Like it's really like someone that just ground up, built the whole thing. So you're like, look, if you want to knock down a wall, then I am down. I really like the contained creative experience.
And just how much more personal it is, and how much more, I mean, it's very vulnerable, obviously. Now it's like everyone's like read your journal now, but I think it is more fulfilling in the fact that it like, you read the words, you're now putting images back into the world. It's of a piece, I think. Do you have plans to write and direct more? Like, what does your creative future hold?
I mean, it's like all I'm doing. I'm like working on 3 things right now, and I'm like, which balloon is going to float away? Like, and I really love being an actor, but it is really scary and time consuming and constant. And I'm greedy, you get like these, I'm so lucky to have projects that are tempting and beautiful. And I have to kind of be like, let that go. Because it took me this long because I was busy. I mean, I was doing other things, and I love being in service. I love it. But, and I'm not over it, but now I'm just like starving to death on the other side. And both positions hold hands in a way that like one fuels the other, and I will flip back and forth. But right now I am dying to do it again.
Would you ever direct yourself as well? Or is that?
Yeah, absolutely. In a word.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I love the movie. I hope a lot of people see it. I think it's a huge success.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.